Are you filming?
Yeah, you can always
You film? Is this on? It's on. And Dimitri they call me Dimi. I'm part of the Big Chain team, currently working on applications, community, some research, some stuff nobody cares sometimes, but having a lot of fun.
Why does nobody care about some of the work that you do?
So there's a few projects that I'm trying to launch related to artificial intelligence, blockchain, self-owned machines, universal basic income, all of these. And whether they have legal grounds, practical grounds is still untested. So they're more like hobby projects. And for now, I'll keep them that way. But they're interesting. It's pioneering work. It's you got this toolbox with blockchain, crypto, and all of these decentralization movements. It's a new toolkit, so you can build stuff that haven't been built before. You can measure the impact on society. You can do stuff that's unregulated, ask questions to governments that they can't answer. So it makes it interesting. At this point in time, you measure it by traction of acceptance. See if you make an interesting blog post, how much reactions you got out of that. Are there people actually attracted to this that weren't looking at this before? Can you take them into your community or ecosystem? So it's more of a marketing tool at this point in time, I think. So we're data driven. We think there's a lot of value in data. An ecosystem around data is typically enterprise to enterprise, where you try to go from multiple sources of truth to a single source of truth, create something like a digital twin of products, a digital representation of a single digital representation of products or entities flowing through this. So people that care about that digital twin, they make an ecosystem. But an ecosystem about identity is way broader than that. So for me, ecosystems are communities that care about the solutions you try to offer. Truth is claims plus identity. It doesn't mean that the observation is actual truth, but it does mean that somebody made a claim about something, and you can measure both. You can measure the identity and the claim and the time that this claim was made. So what the truth is in this case is basically a set of claims that are universally accessible, and they're time-stamped and they're tied to an identity. Once you work on a data level, and you create these golden sources of truth, how you can call it, or these claims data sets. It's very interesting to compare them with unverifiable or unverified sources of truth, for example, on the wild web. So making that correlation between something identity-based, claim-based, and something that's untrusted or untested makes it a very interesting correlation mechanism. So for that, you would use machine learning to make correlations, derive any kind of value-added service, and do analytics, all of these things on top. Consortium data or community data allows you to dive deeper into machine learning, because people will collaborate on creating even bigger data lakes, even bigger data sets. Means it becomes incentivized, means it becomes decentralized, means that data hoarders like Google, Facebook, Uber, all those big companies, they basically found an adversary in the community, where the community can collaborate in creating a collaborative data set that's as significant but incentivized. There will be more impact for AI, as it now has a substrate to learn from. It means also that the development of all of these services based on AI and machine learning, they will progress faster. For example, we have this example with autonomous vehicles, where a company, basically you need AI being trained on 1 trillion miles of driven, measured samples there. So it's fairly impossible to achieve that within one company, but it is feasible to achieve this in a world consortium around vehicle data. So this means that instead of having autonomous vehicles on a 20-year roadmap, you can reduce this to a 5-year roadmap or even less. Exactly, and you can build a way for any contribution. You can make an incentive for any party to contribute data sets. A new way for people to work together, a new way to create services on top of learned, labeled data. I have a few scenarios in my head. Some of them tends toward singularity, some of them tends toward us regulating what's happening in the tech space. We can go into both. First, the singularity vision would be, what if machines start to become self-owned, have a decision and have finances, so become truly independent from humans, which also means they probably will be more efficient and can evolve at some point in time. And there's a lot of things to be resolved, and it might not happen, and we might not have just that little spark that makes a machine more creative than humans. So in that case, it would be bad news for us, because why would machines listen to humans and not take resources from us? The other part is where we start discussing all of this. We do create great applications, but we keep the governance tight. If we keep the governance tight, we always have a way to pull the plug if it doesn't feel right. So intention is law. So this is a bit of what our mission statement says, and that's what we all feel, is that the current systems of power create unequal outcomes. So the current systems of power are so large that a lot of people are just not able to pass a threshold and enjoy the benefits of the system. There are so many unreached, unbanked, unregistered people. So with this entire decentralization movement, you want to give decentralized control. You want to make sure that everybody can be included, can be reached, can be financed, can be banked. So I'm already a little bit proposing one solution. There's of course many other things that need to be resolved, but having concentrations of power seems to me the biggest problem. Probably not, but I can give it a shot. Decentralization is, in a sense, making sure that there is voting rights for everyone. Making sure that decision makers are not single points of failure, but they're basically global sets of failure, where there is more averaging and there is less peaks on let's say, maximalism or minimalism of certain issues. And how we do that, you could say, one vote, one electron, one vote, one identity. There's many ways to do that. In some sense, to me it seems like the amount of hashing power you contribute to a system allows you to gain more advantage in this big tombola we call the puzzle, or the hashing problem you need to solve. It's basically a statistical advantage you can gain by adding more energy to the system. So this is still in early stages, and we're working together with some Dutch companies and legal entities to make this work. And what we want to achieve is basically self-owned utilities. Self-owned utilities because we think utilities should be part of the community or part of a system that's not on single point of control. And this means that they will be more efficient and there will be a world of abundance rather than a world of scarcity. With this abundance, you can feed UBI. So how to achieve this? Well, there's a few things to be resolved, and many of them are technical or legal. So the legal aspect we try to solve by having a very little demo, and it also should imply a bit of the technical. So currently the idea is to create an arts AI that has a wallet. And the AI can create arts, and it uses resources to do so. So it has to be bootstrapped. To do automatic bootstrapping is something else. Once it creates AI, it can go to a market, sell its intellectual property, copyrights, and even the final manifestation of that arts. And from that, it gains new resources, can start building again. But nobody really can touch that wallet of the AI, besides the AI. The wallet is a public. It's a bit like you would have in banking, where you have your account, but a wallet in this case is basically somebody owns a wallet, has access to a secret that nobody else knows. Well, it can be more complex than just a single person, but it means that you have a set of assets assigned to something that only knows that secret to unlock them. So it's basically a vault, and you only know the combination of that vault. Well, I always see this as a layer, a triple layer story. One is the tech, the other one is the governance of the tech, and the last one is the marketing potential and the business opportunities from that tech. I think we've kind of covered a little bit of the tech and the legals. However, the legals could be driven even more. What I kind of want to talk about is ecosystem interoperability inside of the blockchain space, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So currently, I always find this strange that people are reinventing the water or the wheel, or how you say this. And because we can start from scratch, and everybody wants to start from scratch. But it's not that we have to, we want to get rid of data silos, but actually we're creating blockchain silos, technology silos that are relatively uninteroperable. And the question is, with all these alliances forming, like you have the Ethereum Alliance, you have the Hyperledger Alliance, there's a few more dedicated to specific use cases. How can we come to architectures that are plug and play, have standardized protocols, and that people also recognize that for some specialties there are dedicated tools, and they don't have to reinvent them, they just have to use them off the shelf. And sometimes that's really difficult because opening APIs and protocols is not always that easy, because we have to speak the same language, and that language has to be accepted, and we're still in an early stage. Yeah, we are. There's a few nice movements. I'm currently involved in the Ledger movement and the Trusted IoT, and I see a lot of things happening on the distributed identity. So all these little bits and pieces come together, and now it forms a time to actually prove interoperability. Not only talk about it, but also build it. It means that you can probably solve a lot of scaling issues. Scaling issues means, for example, if you have public nets, then everybody can join the net, and you have to make sure that the net is secure enough to, for example, mitigate Sybil or Byzantine faults. And these kind of faults, they occur because anonymous identities need to work together, and they kind of have different incentives. So you have to limit the ability to become a leader in the system, limit the voting power. And to do so, you have to devise a protocol that's quite computationally expensive, and that automatically yields a lower throughput of data, computation, all of these things. But there are ways. What if you don't have to restrict yourself to one single tool, one single consensus layer, but you can basically do heterogeneous consensus, or you can choose which kind of consensus mechanism you do for each part of the job, and in the end you combine the result into something sensible to you. In order to do so, you need to have a messaging layer, you need to have a protocol stack that ties everything together. It's a good question. For me, I would argue it's a protocol which
What's a protocol?
A protocol is basically a set of rules supported by a language that can implement those rules, and that language is understood and accepted and standardized. A protocol is in the expectation reality, a tool is in the implementation reality. People will gain control over their digital fingerprints over the web. People will have a trust layer that they can do peer-to-peer transactions. There won't be, in the digital space and hopefully also in the physical space, the meat space, there won't be some single entity that can pull the plug or change the rules at random. For example, what currency gets accepted, which people can have access to assets, what kind of trades you can make. So I'm thinking that the governance layers we're creating right now with this decentralization space will allow way better debates, more audits, and it's just more transparent. And you and I can have influence in this. It's an augmentation of government. Governments will play a very significant role in having contributions to these protocol sets and auditing these protocol sets, and even making sure there are liabilities assigned and there is rules and governance that are enforced from within a specific juridical district. So yeah, it's not a replacement of governments, it's a new tool for governments to collaborate with their communities across the boundaries of their country. I'm all about these compute markets. Everything related to data exchanges and compute markets, I think, are killer applications for a technology that we're still trying to find out what should it be used for. So I think at this point in time, that's already something we can do. We can build trust to leverage technology creation. Web3 is something trying to progress from a cloud-based, server-based architecture to a serverless architecture, where basically every client hosts a portion or the relevant portion of the truth that it knows, and it would try to sync up that portion of the truth with the rest of the network. But also in terms of computation. Computation will be replicated and being checked and verified by a larger network than just on your local machine. Web3 for the everyman means logging in with, in my case, Dimi instead of Facebook. It means creating payments across borders without expensive fees. It means having the ability to set the rules yourself. It means changing from a model where you have to go to big companies with your data, that big companies or any kind of matchmakers come to you and ask you for data in return for an incentive. So these business models get changed, and I think those paradigm shifts are interesting to talk about, and Web3 makes them something tangible. The thing that Web3 still needs is a lot of UX designers. And because you don't want to know that you're using a blockchain, you just want to get the value from it. I think blockchain is one of those Nakamoto-based consensus mechanisms that make it feasible to run a decentralized network, which is required for Web3 implementation. So it's just one of those implementations. And there are many more than blockchain. You don't have to have, I don't see that you necessarily need to have blocks, for example. Yeah, so probably before we started BitchainDB, we had this project called Ascribe, which is still up and running. It's all about intellectual arts. And it was a time of colored coins. So the Bitcoin network was up and running, was doing its best. and was just at the verge of the white paper of Ethereum, so it wasn't yet a network there. So a lot of people were in this colored coin space. And the idea behind colored coins was, let's create apps inside of the Bitcoin network. So at one point in time we said, well, one of those apps can be copyright management. So you can make a claim, which is basically receiving a claim coin, and then from that claim coin you can create copyright coins that you can issue. So basically treat copyright issuance as tokens on a Bitcoin ledger. Of course, what we wanted to do was make this really cheap. At the time, the dust fee was 573 Satoshi or 537 or something like that, really cheap. So, okay, we started using this, creating microtransactions using up return to basically encode the information we needed to identify the copyrights. And then we started to scrape the web because we thought, well, you need to have a database that can index all of this. Little we knew that the blockchain was easily bloated. So at some point in time, our IP addresses got blocked by the miners, and we entered the community of the miners asking like, what's happening here? And yeah, the basic answer was, well, we're a value ledger, not a data ledger. So they couldn't see the value in copyright management, I guess. And like 1 week later, the mining minimum transaction fee became 30K Satoshi. Probably because of our efforts there to DDoS the database, and it went on and on and on, and I think now it's even like over 100 Satoshi, so sorry for that. Yeah.
Awesome, that's great. What's your favorite band?
My favorite band is a New Zealand band called Fat Freddy's Drop, and they rock.